All right, we are back again. Episode 3. In fact, things have gone so well. There's such a clamor for what we're doing. The advertisers are jumping on board that we could afford a new panelist. So we brought in the old man, my big little brother, Stephen Marchesani, has joined the group. So glad to have him because now it's 2 old guys against 2 young guys. I think that'll play better. He can share more of the old crap I talk about because of my feeble memory that's fading away, and we'll see how it goes. So we got to start, though, by asking Steve, if you're going to be on this panel, you have to be credentialed. So please give us your credential as a talking head.
Well, it all started a long time ago in 1977. I went to my first game.
All right.
I remember my dad telling me that the Giants were not good, but it's fun to go to the games.
Setting expectations.
I was 7 years old at the time, and I was like, that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
Other than that, as far as, personally, I'm a Giants fan second to the Vikings. I'm just going to be honest here. The reason is more ridiculous than you might think. I was 5. My favorite color was purple, and my dad bought me a Vikings shirt.
That's right.
And it's stuck ever since. The ties that bind. So anyway, but I've been to a number of games. I watched the Vikings beat the Giants down by 9 with a minute and a half to go to the playoffs, and I watched the Giants beat the Vikings down 41-0 by halftime. So I've been on both sides of that spectrum.
Are you bringing up the Randall Cunningham pain?
I may be.
Yeah, well, that's not.
Well, see, but here's the thing, though: is the Randall Cunningham pain for you? To me, was it more or less than the pain I felt watching the Vikings leave a nice brown frosty turd in Giant Stadium, losing 41-0, with Dad looking at me and having the time of his life, and then looking at me and seeing me sitting in my chair upset and started crying because he was upset he was having fun at my expense.
All right, so that's a little teaser. There's a lot more to talk about that game and our father. We'll do that as a prelude into the first game of the season. But there's a little teaser about our father's ability to cry at will. So that was good. So we need
always with great effect.
But we need a little bit more on your credentials. We want to hear about your athletic prowess. So give us that.
Well, I was an above average basketball player in the 80s, and at 6'5" you could play center in the 80s. And I went on to play several years in college. I even got to play in a couple of reasonably renowned tournaments. So
great.
I have the college sport experience, D3, but that doesn't mean we don't work as hard, right?
Hey.
Yeah.
You're ranked, in the panel in terms of sports legacy. Drew gets a nod because he played the sport we're talking about, but you guys
you're
right there. Yeah. Yeah.
Are you saying a D4 roller hockey all-star is not
qualified
at this panel?
It got you to third. You're ahead of me, so it's all how you look at it, right?
I just found out that there's a D4.
It's all perspective. It's all perspective. So yeah. Well, and here's the story that I'm guessing Lucas and Drew don't know. So the last time I played organized football, and I'm pretty sure it's the last time you did too, Steve.
It is.
Somehow there was enough of an age range where we were on the same team. I just barely, because we're 3 years apart, and I just barely made it on the wire. So I was one of the biggest kids in the league, all skin and bones.
Oh, he was 10 and we were 7. So imagine the difference between your average 10-year-old and 7-year-old.
Yeah.
So
that's how most of the leagues are like that 3 year.
Well, and if it was weight based, I weighed about as much as a 7-year-old, so that's fun.
This is true. I don't as tall as most 10-year-olds, so it worked out.
So, but the funnier part of the story was we were the Colts, which was fun. The Vikings, funnily enough, they didn't like that I was on the team, so they went out and got the biggest person they could find, which was a girl, to play against me. And somewhere out there's a picture of me rushing the passer, and there's a woman with pink mittens trying to block me. That picture exists. It's somewhere out there. So just so you know,
she was hardcore, man.
That's Tracy. What was her last name? I can't remember. I remember her first name was Tracy.
Tracy Ritchie, my best friend Patrick's sister.
That's right. Patrick's older sister. That's right. So when the Richies watch this, shout out to Tracy and Patrick. So anyway. All right, let's get into it. So episode 3 dropped last night. I certainly had a chance to watch it. I know you guys did too. Lucas, give me your first take on. Let's start with the Saquon part because that was the big part of the beginning. What did you pick up in that you didn't know or that had an impression on you?
I mean, it was nice to get clarity that like we didn't actually offer him, but they kind of worded it in like the best way possible. They're like, "Oh, we don't want to offend him by lowballing him, so we're just not going to offer anything at all."
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, all right, like whatever. Like it always sucks he's going to go to the Eagles. He'll probably look awesome. It is what it is, but yeah, it's good. It's over and done with. He seemed happy on social media. I saw some of his tweets that he was like, all right, see, I wasn't lying. I told all of you. Like, they didn't offer me, so.
Oh, you mean last night he was responding just to back up the fact?
Yeah, there's the Giants podcast listen to Talking Giants. He responded to them. They like put a screenshot and said, we're Saquon's #1 source. So
Gotcha.
That's kind of funny.
Gotcha. Drew, any take from your perspective on that?
It was funny to see how Mara was like he was our most popular player.
Yeah.
We know he brings
That's
he
why
he
we're
brings
bad.
yeah
Right
he
there.
brings in the dollar aspect in terms of the fan base, the popularity. So seeing him, obviously kind of upset about it is not surprising, but it was definitely interesting to see that take on it.
So wait, Lucas, what's your take there? Mara likes players that are popular, but not necessarily the right players.
Let me put it this way: like great leaders have to make unpopular decisions all the time because they're the best thing for the organization or the team or whatever you're leading, right? He's purely focused on dollars. That's why you're losing because you're not making. It's not. No one wins with a running back that's getting paid $13.5 million a year. No one has.
Okay.
The closest that's come is Christian McCaffrey making the Super Bowl last year, and they lost.
Okay. All right.
I think there's a list that you can find. Like,
I like
the
that
average running
perspective.
back hasn't been paid more than I think it's like $3 or $4 million a year in the last 12, 15 Super Bowl winners.
I told you,
So
Timmy Smith, right?
Yeah, exactly. So,
What's your what about you, Steve? Would you catch it there?
One, I felt that you could see the dread on Shine's face every time he talked about Saquon.
yeah, because he knows Mary doesn't want it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and he's like going, I gotta. And the fact that he always called his agent first, I thought was interesting. Like, I don't know if that's standard protocol, but it's like, I'm gonna talk to the agent, and then I'm gonna talk to Saquon.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if he was talking to the agent in an effort to sort of soften Saquon's conversation, he does them immediately after each other. Like, there was no break in the filming.
Yeah.
So it's not like the agent had time to talk to Saquon in between to sort of, pat out. But I did notice that Mara was specifically said if he ends up going to Philly, that's going to be particularly painful.
Yeah, he said I'm hard time sleeping. Hard time sleeping. So I give Mara credit, right? He empowered Shane to do his job, right? He did give his opinion, but he wasn't heavy-handed owner that said, no, you're doing this deal. I find it funny. Mara's obviously very aware of the cameras. He just drops in, hands in pockets with his little vest on, says a few words, and then leaves. So I appreciate his style in this. But a couple of things I heard Shane say that I thought were interesting, where he was playing games a bit, I thought, where he was acting like, hey, if you're at this and that's what you want, you'll stay, right? And then he turns right around and goes, well, this may be above me. Like, he wasn't agreeing to that, which to me was him saying, listen, you're going somewhere else. Like, it was obvious he made up his mind. Even when he said to his guys, he said, you guys would be up for offering him something? Meaning, I'm not, but you guys would be? Like, he said that to his guys.
He was done with it after the last episode. You could tell he was done with it. You battled last year for it. You got turned down. Oh, well.
Although the panic when he was talking to the agent, he said, is it someone in the division? I just want to know.
Yeah.
Like,
I just want to know for my mental.
That's right.
That's
so I can prepare.
That's right.
So I can prepare. Yeah, you're going to prepare, all right.
That's right.
That's right. Who's the bad source?
The only negative spin I would put on it is, okay, the Giants, I think it's obvious, are in a rebuilding position right now, and they don't know who their quarterback is going to be. They made that very clear in the last one. They don't even know if Jones is really even going to start game one. So I'm not sure that they wouldn't have – it would have hurt their salary cap to keep Saquon, obviously. But I don't know that it necessarily would have hurt it so much over the course of the next 3 years while they're building to not keep fan interest up enough and make them enough money to counter what they would have paid him. It wouldn't have figured in the salary cap, but a little bit of fan service wouldn't have been the worst thing to do because after this year, they're looking for another running back anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm so on the fence. I like the perspective that's being shared. I get too attached to players, so I could be like Mara. Like I just like Saquon a lot, but
Yeah.
he's not reliable injury wise, and
Agreed.
I believe that a line is more important than a good running back. If your line's
Also
good
agreed.
enough, a guy like Singletary will still do really well. He may not he'll break one for 40 that Saquon would take to the house. Okay, so we got 40. We didn't get 75, right?
Well,
So
that's where they tied it in the episode too, where they were talking about how important it was spreading out the money across. You know, they were showing all the lineman prospects, and we ended up with two pretty solid guys in free agency. So it was like either you pay Saquon the money and you have the same crappy line, or you build a line, get a guy for less money and running back, and then try to. And they said even when Saquon, when all this unfolded, and they signed Singletary, and they showed the side-by-side comparisons of the production last year, you got the same production basically for less money. So it was like it was a no-brainer at that point.
And I'm pretty sure, right? I mean, Singletary was in Buffalo with Shane and Dayball, right? So he's their guy, and they've had a tendency, like a lot of teams do, right? I mean, it's funny, like we'll get to it later on, Pepper Johnson, but basically wherever like Parcells or Belichick was, Pepper Johnson was there. Right? So, I mean, you get your guys and, they help you win. Great. So let's talk about O-line. So, I mean, it seemed like two really solid guys, both those guys. So.
Well, sorry.
Go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say, I hadn't really heard of the guy they got from the Raiders. I'm not even sure how to pronounce his name. I apologize for that.
I think it's like Umaladore or something like that.
What's funny is it reminds me of Yura, and they gave him his number, which I thought was funny. He's got OC's number, so now I'm just going to call him Yura until I figure it out, right?
I just found it interesting that they could get a quality tackle that cheap. Normally tackles are significantly more than guards, but they really paid for Runyon a lot more than they paid for him. So I'm just curious, were they looking for additional depth, or is he looking to be a lockdown starter at tackle?
I think it's weak side versus strong side. Look, Thomas is protecting the blind side, so that's where the more money is. Right.
But the Vikings, I'm using the Vikings because I do follow them. Their right tackle they've got for like $9 a year because he's a good quality tackle. Yeah. So I know that there's a disparity, sure, but it just seemed like a really big one unless he's possibly other positions and adding depth. But I'm not sure.
Wasn't he the one though that only wanted 2 years?
Yeah, he wanted 2 years.
Yeah.
You got happy birthday again.
The balloons again.
But no, he's going to be the starting left guard because that's what they said.
Yeah, he was a Swiss Army knife for the Raiders, and that's why they liked him because
that makes more sense.
He literally, for them, played every spot on the line.
And our O-line coach is also coached him in New England and the Raiders, so like that's his guy. So that's also why we brought him along.
Just
perfect, thank you.
Follow along. That's why we need these young guys, Steve. They pay attention to this stuff. So.
And you got Runyon Jr. too, which is
that's hysterical.
That's hilarious.
That's hysterical because Strahan and Runyon have such a history. They're good friends now, but like they used to go at it back in the day. So
well, they made the point when they were talking the negotiations, which it ties into what you said, where people like to go with players and coaches. They were saying to get the deal done over the Jets because he played with Rodgers and he knows Nathaniel Hackett. Basically saying, look, we got to go up a little bit, or he's going to go with his guys. So they had to make that sacrifice, and that's what took what was his name, Robert Hunt, out of the mix.
Yeah.
He was another big name free agent line. So they sacrificed a little bit to get 2 out of 3, but I think and then there's the Evan Neal. People are saying his injury could be a lot worse than what they thought it was. So that's another who knows if he's going to be, around much longer.
I think he might be done. I think they didn't mention, so when they were talking about like the building blocks for the offensive line, they mentioned Andrew Thomas, JMS, and Runyon. They didn't mention Neal. Drafted 7 overall 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think he might have gotten ruined, which is a real shame.
It is.
It has on him, but the ankle is the ankle, All
right. So, Drew, I always go to you with defensive backs. They didn't really talk much about X. Like it just was, he's getting $17 million. Any idea why that was such a non-factor?
It's crazy to me because he didn't miss a single defensive snap last season, which I think made his value so much higher in the safety market, because I feel like a lot of the big time safeties do get hurt a lot because of their explosiveness and being all over the field and whatnot. And I think that only, put him to the top of that list. And he kind of was sour like Saquon too, because I think there was an opportunity last year where they could have gave him an extension or a contract, and he kind of did like that prove it year, and he proved that he could, play a full season without missing a snap. And I guess just that money wasn't in their cards. They would have rather spent it somewhere else.
Well,
so
who do you think they're hoping is going to step up?
They drafted the kid Newman out of Minnesota, who they have a lot of high hopes for. And I feel Pinnock and Belton came on strong really towards the back end of the season. So I think they're trying to do it by committee now at a lot of positions, opposed to paying a lot of guys just one at a time kind of deal. So I think that's the route that they're going. And
are you excited about Spider-Man?
Oh, absolutely. Jersey's on the way. So I thought that was to go from the negatives of the whole Saquon thing to that. Like when that whole ordeal happened, like I was down in the dumps for a couple days, and then when they announced that trade and when they signed him, I was through the roof. So
well, I can't remember, and again, you guys follow this stuff when it comes to these details more than I do. But when's the last time we paid that much money for a free agent and it paid off?
Oh, we never paid this much money for anybody before.
Okay, well, but I meant a big splash free agent in the context of that season, right? I mean, the numbers always go up, but
maybe Pierce.
Yeah, was Pierce a big signing when we got him, though?
Well, I know we stole him for a little bit of a high price from Washington. I remember that. Like, they were surprised that he didn't stay with Washington, but I don't know if we overpaid for him or paid a lot for him, but I know that it was a big coup.
I have to go back and look at that one. So that's an interesting one to bring up, especially since he comes up later. So anybody losing sleep over? Well, funny thing though about Runyon, you talked about X. I hated that they said he hasn't missed a game in 3 years. Like talk about a freaking kiss of death. Like shut up, shut up. He's not going to make it out of training camp. Okay,
absolute kiss of death.
No, he didn't you see him? I thought he twisted his ankle walking into the room.
Man, shut up. Yeah. Anyway, all right. Drew Lock, Tyrod. Oh, go ahead, Steve. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I thought was interesting in regards to the defense and paying the defensive backs is the actual approach of it seems you have to make a choice these days of defensive backs versus defensive line. Because they were talking about Thibodeau and now Burns, and they're like going, we got 3 top-tier defensive linemen.
Right.
We're willing to sacrifice the back end for that because if they don't have time to throw, coverage doesn't have to last as long, kind of thing. And it's interesting because a lot of teams pick it one way or the other. They'll cover longer so we can get to the quarterback, or we'll get the quarterback so they don't have to cover. Rarely do you see both.
Yeah, and it's important to have those guys at that second level that are good run stoppers, though, too. So you want safeties that are going to stick their nose in there.
We got some good young guys, I feel like, in the secondary that we built through the draft. So I got confidence back there. But to that point, if they're rushing the passer like we think they're going to, they're not going to have to, be in coverage for too long. So
nope.
Now, in terms of the QB situation, again, it was interesting that they did want Tyrod. He ended up just going to the other locker room, which is interesting. I don't know. I think it's interesting for him to get to play with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, that's kind of pretty cool, right? Like, I can't blame him that. But Drew Lock, I'd actually never seen him before, right? Like, in terms of his face. And talking about a guy who just looked like a classic frat boy college quarterback. Like, he just has that look about him.
He's given more than one person a swirly.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. And then he had to ask, so what's our nickname? What do we say? What's our phrase? Big Blue?
Big Blue? Big Blue?
Well, somebody said F the Eagles,
the Eagles,
right?
too. F the Eagles, too. I mean, he did beat them last season.
Which, if he wanted to get to our hearts, that should have been what he said, right? That would have been that would have gone viral.
But he had the potential with the unknown of Daniel Jones to be the starter for Game 1. So I'm going to be curious. And from all the reports that in camp, even Tommy DeVito's putting up a fight. So who knows who's going to be QB number 1 comes first week.
So who's the face of our franchise at this point?
Well, that's a good point.
Brian Burns.
It could be Brian Burns, Spider-Man.
And Dex.
You can't forget about sexy
Dex.
Dexy.
And I mean, Kayvon's going to start to make I think, more noise this year too, from be more visible, especially with Burns helping him out. Like, I think one of those guys might get to 15 this year in sacks. I do. I think one of those guys.
I think double digits is possible.
I think they both should have double digits. Deck will only have like 5 or 6, but that's because he's a nose.
Yeah, but he's a nose guard. Like, I mean, the only guy that was an amazing sacker over decades was Warren Sapp as a nose guard. Otherwise,
Aaron Donald,
those guys
would a lot.
eat up guys in the middle, right? So, but and then just to wrap up the episode, I did think it was interesting to see Joe and his family at home and recognizing and I know this in the industries I've been in, how small things get. But the whole back and forth with the Carolina GM, who's obviously his buddy, where their daughters are friends, was just too funny to me, right? Where he's like, come on, man, I'm not giving you a 7th. We got to keep doing this for years. Like, it was
He even said his full government name when he answered the phone.
Yeah, as a guy who studies negotiation, I thought it was an interesting ploy to try to get him to throw more stuff in the pot to see if he'd go. And I thought Shane handled it pretty well. So, and then his son saying how his buddies come up and try to tell him, tell your dad, we have to
That is funny.
Yeah. Any more closing thoughts on the episode?
Overall, I'm still iffy on the way. I don't know, the way Shine talks. Shane. I keep calling Shine. The way he talks, something about it just seems a little disingenuous. I can't really put my finger on it.
I have the same opinion. I'm less of a fan of his watching the show and more of a fan of Dable's, and I was already a pretty big fan of his. And so, yeah, he's a little bit of a manipulator. Like, I didn't like when he goes, I'm going to let the phone ring one more time. Like, he plays a lot of games, and I do think he's a bit of a... But, as a GM, you got to be that way. So if he puts a winning team on the field, I don't care what kind of a jerk he is. But I'm not falling in love with Joe Shane from this show, and that's okay. That's totally okay. So, yeah, but I'm on the same page. All right. I think as far as I know, there's 5 episodes total, so there's 2 more left. I am sure the next one is all about the draft. So
next one, the previews looked very interesting.
Yeah. And then I don't know how they'll wrap it up. Maybe they do OTAs. Maybe it's a whole thing about...
I think you're going to get a lot of Daniel Jones in one of the episodes.
Probably.
Because they made him a focal point in a lot of the trailers and stuff.
Yeah,
so you'll probably get like status updates with him and whatnot.
Because this episode was almost entirely in his office. Like, it was just,
They got a nice office. Take that.
Yeah. All right, let's go 80 to 71 here. So, again, love that it was Pepper and Haas. I mean, those are our boys going back, to our time. So, but
I still think the greatest play from the Super Bowl that Haas won was him not fumbling when being sacked.
Yeah.
That was the greatest play of the whole game.
Yeah. Are you familiar with that play that he's talking about?
I've seen the highlight.
Basically, early in the game, he's going to get a safety. If not, give up a touchdown. And Bruce Smith, of all people, I mean, he grabs his wrist where the ball is, and somehow he does not let it go.
I've watched Bruce Smith talk about it. He's like, I have no idea how that ball did not come out.
Haas said the same thing. He's like, I don't know how I held on to that ball.
Yeah. But one of the things that came through to me about Haas, and again, I don't know if this is salary cap, free agency, how much player movement there is, but you want to talk about a lost art, a long-term backup, the value of that. I mean, it's amazing what Haas did, but how Parcells even had the wisdom to put him in situations that you'd never see today. Can you imagine Eagles, like us playing the Cowboys and late in the season, and we're winning, and DeVito's our backup, and Daniel's playing great, and he goes, "Hey, Danny, go take this fourth quarter for me." No way.
Twitter would explode.
Oh my gosh.
Everyone would lose their minds.
But that's what Parcells did. So so he was a genius. And I mean, Haas was just I've heard him tell that story 100 times, where he basically was like, "I'm done," told his wife, "I'm out," and then the very next game, right, he's sitting there, because I'll never forget this game, because in that season, there were 9 games because there was a playoff game, and I went to 7 of them. And I mean, this is living in Maryland, basically. So driving up, I missed the Cardinals game, which was the comeback game of Haas that they talked about, and the Bills game that was late in the season. And the Bills game was 40 degrees and raining. I mean, it was terrible. I was so happy I didn't go. And Haas is like, I've never been colder in my life. And I see Sims laying on the ground. And I'm like, just get up, man. Come on. Stop messing with me. Just get up. You're fine. So, and that's when everything changed. What games did you go to that season? You remember? 1990? Because you were in school.
The only ones I remember, I was in school, so I didn't. I think I made it up to one playoff game because it happened during the winter break. But I wasn't playing ball that year, so I did have a little bit of winter time.
Yeah,
I think I went to the. I think I went to the divisional playoff game.
Well, the only one they had at home was the Bears. They played the Bears at home, and then they went to
the first
49.
game.
That was it. Then they went to 49ers.
Yeah.
So they had one home playoff game that year.
Then it's possible I didn't go to any that year.
Okay. Well, then now we know the formula. If you don't go, they go to the Super Bowl.
I bet we've won then.
So,
sorry.
But I did go to a Super Bowl that they won. So,
and we're going to test if Uncle Steve. So this is Uncle Steve McMahon. If he's watching this, because I'm going to tell the story from at least how I heard it, and then he can correct me because it's probably inaccurate. But from what I recall, part of why I wasn't at the Cardinals game is because he was there. Like, he had tickets. I can't remember. I don't think Pop went. I don't remember who was with Uncle Steve, but they were losing in the fourth quarter. And he, like many New York and New Jersey people, have their anxiety. They're leaving the game early, no matter the situation. Yep. So they're losing, fourth quarter, he leaves, but they could hear things happening. And then the next thing I know, Haas is bringing them back. And the story I heard was like they jumped in the car and made it to the closest bar they could so they could watch the rest of the game. So correct me if that story's wrong, Uncle Steve, if you watch this, but that's the story I remember hearing. So
anyway. That's been me the last couple of years, hopping on the train, missed a couple comebacks, so I know the pain.
Yeah. Any thoughts on Haas from stuff you heard that you didn't know? Anybody else?
I just knew his nephew who played at River Hill, so I always used to see him running around Howard County and whatnot, and football and high school stuff, so he was always around.
Haas had his brother lived, not far from where I used to live in Howard County years ago. Yep. Well, and I thought it was cool that Phil Simms recognized that he may not have won that Super Bowl. That because of who Haas was as a player, like Phil doesn't just go around saying, well, I would have had 2 rings. So he gives Haas due credit, which I thought was great. So, yeah, I mean, the other guys on the list, like I said, Pepper, love Pepper. It was cool to see, some of those linemen. But, I think, Steve, you made a comment before we got on about some of the other players. So please share your thoughts.
I'm going to start. Well, I have one sobering and one that I think is funny. Number 73, punter kicker Don Chandler. Well, first of all, the picture that they have online is of him in a Green Bay uniform. So, I'm going to start with that.
You mean the picture the Giants have of him online is in a Packers uniform?
Yeah. Being blocked by the Raiders, so I know it's not a mistake.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like the Giants were on defense or anything. It's a picture of him in a Packer uniform. But, like, how few really good players over 100 years do you have where you have 3 punters in your top 100? Because if he's here, Landetta has to be.
Yeah.
And so does Dave Jennings.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you're
not put Fiegels in there?
Well,
okay.
4 punters, baby. 4 punters. Fiegels. I love it.
You don't want Weatherford? You don't want Weatherford either?
I believe in '79, Dave Jennings was the most valuable player for the Giants.
He was. They had a punter that was MVP of the team. Yeah. That is factually correct. So, yes.
The other one I wanted to point out was a little sobering. So, we have an older brother, Pete. He's 4 years older than us, and he was a very big devotee, very young, and knew all the players before I even knew them. My dad used to get us football cards all the time. And one of the players that Pete had always talked about was a guy named Troy Archer.
Yes.
Who was a linebacker who died of cancer.
I thought he was a D lineman.
He was a D lineman.
Yeah.
But I remember him being, a good player, an up-and-coming player, and the pairing of him and John Mendenhall was supposed to be one of the building blocks with Carson as linebacker for the Giants in the late 70s. And then, Troy Archer died, and, it didn't really start to manifest until the early 80s. But I just remember hearing John Mendenhall and Troy Archer as being sort of up-and-coming defensive linemen for the Giants when I was little.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's good that you bring up Archer because he's a player I'd forgotten about. And I remember Mendenhall. Remember Pop liking Mendenhall a lot and having that potential. But when you listen to when you got Pepper and Reasons on this list, and you go through the lineage of linebackers from the late '70s through into the '90s, that ends up with AP, which is really cool. You're like, man, what a plethora of riches we had. I mean. You got Carson and Van Pelt, and you draft Taylor. Now you got Carson and Taylor, and you draft Banks. Now you got those three, you draft Pepper Johnson. Now you got those guys, and you draft Garrett Reasons. Like, it just keeps going and going. Well, I desperately miss that. Those were such good times when you have depth at that position. So, and I don't know if I've ever seen a cooler play, like a more almost movie-like play than Reasons tackle in that Denver game. When he just comes flying
go over top of each other and just
at the goal line, yeah,
and then fall straight down.
Yeah, it just
neither one gave. He just hit him a little earlier, and they just fell straight down. That was awesome.
So, love to hear the young guy, since AP is probably the only guy on this list that you really knew. Thoughts on AP?
Drew, you want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
Yeah, I'll go. No, it was cool because without him, I feel like that 07 defense. He was like the mastermind. Had his recognition of plays. They made it, known with that Packer game where he, made that game-saving tackle on the screen. So I felt like he was always in the right place at the right time. He always had us in the right defense. And I feel like with him being a coach now, I feel like that just shows the kind of guy he was on the field. So I think it's pretty cool that, it's a full circle moment for him. And, he, like you said, just the tutelage of linebackers we had over the years, and he definitely stands out to me in my childhood. So
yeah, how about you, pal?
I don't know how I could say better than Drew did. He stole all my points. So.
Yeah, well, I guess it'd be AP. The thing that struck me, and this is now it's going to be fatherly advice time, but. It's the importance of preparation, man, and that's true in whatever job you are doing. Like, never walk into any meeting, no matter how much your job feels mundane or anything. Prepare, because it pays off, man, and people notice it, people recognize it. It's how you become a leader, and so it's fun to hear the backstories of a guy when you only see how he plays on the field, right? About how hard he worked, what a high football IQ he had, and to your point. How it's paid off, because now he's a great coach. Like, I'm just so happy to see a guy like him, getting a shot on the sideline. So as long as he's not playing us.
And I would even go so far as to say if he didn't play 5 years with the Skins, he'd be much higher on this list.
If he's absolutely as a Giant,
yeah. Well, and that's the fun part about this list too is, again. Like, I'll be curious where a guy like a Fran Tarkington ends up on this list. Mm-hmm. So, because he's a Hall of Fame quarterback, and in a short stint with the Giants, and they even alluded to him a little bit in this episode, because one of the guys was, I think, one of his receivers. And he had an impact, but they didn't win any playoff games. I don't even think their best year, they were 8-8. But he's an iconic player. So, where's he going to end up? I know he's going to be on it. It shouldn't be too high, right? Versus a guy like Howard Cross, who in stints, really not a great player, but he played for frickin' ever, right? He's going to play the most games.
We were talking about that before the podcast. Yep. He played on 3 Super Bowl teams.
Exactly.
Longevity is a skill.
Exactly. So, and that's where, like, I'm surprised. Like, there's no way Odell's not on the list, but I also think he's starting to get too high, in my opinion.
I think if he's not in the next 20.
20? You're going 20. Okay.
He shouldn't be 50 or below.
I agree. And again, don't get me wrong. Well, you heard Shane say it, and you could have said the same thing to Odell. Stay 3 more years and you're in the Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
Right? You're a legendary player in a legendary franchise.
I think that's what's helping him in his case of being lower on the list is his numbers. I think if he didn't have the numbers, then we wouldn't even be having a conversation. It'd just be the catch. It'd be the cool play here and there. I think he has the statistics to back it up.
Yeah.
Just from that short time.
first 3-year stretch of any receiver ever. I think it is.
Justin Jefferson and he
I'm
passed. Justin Jefferson just
at the time.
Total yes.
yards, but Odell
yes.
had like another like 12 touchdowns over JJ.
Yeah,
like, I mean, insane like that. Where it's like
yardage wise, Justin Jefferson I think just had beat it within the last year or two. So
Yep.
But yeah, like insane like that. So.
Yeah, and so just from a logistics perspective, again, we got to this episode sooner. We'd rather be on this timeline, but they're probably going to release 70 to 61 tomorrow because I think they're doing like 2 a week. So whatever 2 they release by the next time we talk, we'll do those. So it'll be interesting to see what comes of that. All right. Well, we're running along a little bit long here, but we do want to start weaving in some stories. So we're gonna have story time with Uncle Steve. So I've asked him to share one of my favorite short stories of a Giants game experience. So, Steve, take it away.
This is at the new Giants Stadium. It was probably second year. I have close friends that are Eagles fans that for a while there. I was taking them yearly, and then there were the 4 unpleasant fellow fans that would not sit down in front of us. And our seats are only 4 rows off of the field. So you don't need to stand to see everything. You can sit, get up, have a ball when things are happening, but don't just stand the entire time. It's unnecessary, and you're literally blocking like 9 rows of people. So I'm stewing, watching this guy, and I'm like, you can sit down, bud. And he's like, hey, whatever, and spilling his beer. And until eventually I started to get really, really mad. My best friend, Rick, at the time, is like, he's noticing this. So I lean forward. I'm like, look, I'm going to ask you last time. Sit down. And he blows me off. And Rick's like, don't worry, man. I got this. And he leans forward. And he whispers something in the guy's ear, pats him on the shoulder, and leans back. And the guy sits down. And he doesn't get up the rest of the game. So as we're leaving, I was like, Rick, what did you say to the guy? I told him that I study MMA and I could punch him in the kidney so hard he'd pee blood for a week if he doesn't sit his ass down. And that was that.
See, very peaceful man. So,
he made a promise he could keep, and the guy respected it. I think that's how you work things out.
I agree, and the fun part is if that were in Philly, he just would have started throwing punches. We're peaceful.
Exactly, we are.
We're peaceful in New Jersey. That's what we do.
Oh no, we've seen some brawls. Let's there's another time.
I'll tell the Dallas face paint story at some point because that's another classic that I witnessed. It goes way back. So, yeah, and then. Lucas, we won't tell a story about it, but I'll mention it now. Probably one of the worst experiences was the year the Eagles won the Super Bowl, and there were like 4 of us in our seats surrounded by green. It was terrible. It was like we were in Philly. So, anyway, I don't want to end on a sour note, but what are we going to do? So, all right, guys, I'm going to start to play us out here. I got the music going, so it was a good episode. I did wear... we got to get back to this, right? It's starting to get old. I need a new one, so maybe we'll get back there someday. But I was with you for that game, my brother, so maybe someday the 4 of us will go to one. That's the ultimate dream.
That'd be awesome.
If it's every 25 years, just so you know, because Pop-Up went to Super Bowl 21, we went to 46, that would mean
13 years from now.
61. We're almost halfway there.
Well, Leah was pregnant with Lance when she said I could go. I'm like, you're a great wife.
I'll be 70, so let's not think about that. All right, guys.
Alrighty then.
All right. All right. Take care.
Peace, my family.
God bless. Love you. Love you. Peace out.
Love you.